Hello people, welcome back. We're now on the second parallel sections of today's programs. So our speakers today will answering one of the most asked questions among those who are transitioning into UX design or for young design students, from what UX is, tools and resources to be ones, or to finding a job in the UX industry, and so on. All of your inquiries will be answered by Chris Nguyen. He is the former head of product design at Ascent Bangkok. Chris is also a very frequent speaker on the community, so let us welcome Chris Nguyen to our stage.
Hey, are we live?
Yes, we are.
How's it going? Great, awesome. Okay, hey everybody. We have a lot to get through today, so I just want to dive straight in if that's okay with you, Sean, and thanks for the introduction. Okay, here we go. All right, everybody can see that, right? Okay, so thanks for that introduction again, Sean. So hey everyone, thanks for joining today. Let's get straight into it. I think I have about 100 slides, so if we're lucky, we can make the time. Okay, so I actually have three different names. So a Vietnamese one, a Chinese one, and an English one, but you guys can call me Chris, okay? Simple. And who is Chris? Well, Chris grew up in England. That's me and my sister with the tremendous haircuts. And that's Trafalgar Square in the background as we were kids. And I actually graduated with a business degree. So I'm not your typical designer. And I think that's good for many of you. So after struggling to find a job for about 6 months, in 2013, I decided to move to Vietnam. And I started out working in tech. My first role was in digital marketing, where I basically got to do some really bad graphic design work. So for about 2 years after that, I eventually taught myself UX and got my first product design job at a company called Tiny Pulse. And since then, I've designed dozens of products. 4 companies on the top row and working with companies on the bottom row. So I held design leadership positions, and essentially my last job was all about mentoring, training, hiring designers. And really the objective was to build an awesome design team. So this gives me a really unique perspective of what your potential employer might look for when they're looking to hire you and ultimately get you hired. So starting out in UX can seem a bit crazy and confusing, and a lot of people might end up getting lost or waste a lot of time at the beginning. I know I did. And hopefully by the end of this talk, we'll take you through this endless maze and give you a more simple and straightforward path, something that you can actively work on as a UX designer. So let's step back a bit. Let's ask, who is this presentation for? So first is for students, right? Ones who have just graduated or about to graduate, because they're often stressing about their potential career. They need some sort of guidance and insight on actually what happens in the real world. So things like applications, interviews, and what you need to work in the UX field might be useful. And the second is designers. You could be a web designer, you could be a graphic designer or a motion designer. How do you then transition to this field of UX, right? Or you could even be junior designers just looking to improve their craft. So maybe you're looking on advice about education, the experience, how do you get more experience outside of your daily 9 to 5, and how can you make your portfolio better? So if this all sounds interesting to you, I present to you guys the UX Getting Started Guide. 6 simple steps to get you started in user experience design. And don't worry about taking notes. I will share everything that I speak about in an article I wrote to prepare for this. So look out for that link. So let's get back to the guide. Okay, so it's 6 steps. Get excited, get educated, get the right tools, get some experience, get social, and get hired. Job done, right? But with any new thing we do, we always have to ask ourselves, why are we doing it? So it's a new pursuit. So please, designers, ask yourself why. Like all good designers, we always start with why. Why do you want to get into UX design? Is it because it's cool, or do you see the growing opportunities in Southeast Asia? Why is this the best choice versus visual or motion? Then you should be asking yourself, what? What are your motivations to get in? Because you could easily give up in a month, and that's fine if that happens. What do you want to achieve? Do you want to do it as a hobby? Do you want to get a job from it, or you want it as a side hustle, or all of those are still okay? So think about those questions before you go all in and then decide to step in. So let's go to the first step, right? So let's say you've decided you want to get in to this field. So how do we get excited? So here are some of the ideas. First, you have to answer a very crucial question, which is, what is user experience design, or what the F is user experience? So I'm not going to tell you today. You probably already know. So there's lots of free things out there, but understanding this as a fundamental before you fully commit is probably a good idea. And then we got to think about the umbrella of UX, right? There's a lot of terms that actually go into this. So the next step I like to tell people to do is actually speak to a UX designer, like what we're doing now. So you can see that different companies and different markets actually have sort of a different terminology, and also it's about the design maturity of the organization. So questions that you might ask your UX designer friend is, what does your day-to-day look like? What kind of problems do you need to solve? And how much time is spent doing designs, speaking to users? And then probably one of the most important questions is, do you like your job? Because if they say no, it's probably something you don't want to get into. But speaking to a bunch of people and contrasting and comparing those answers will give you a clearer understanding of what it is like to work in this field, right? So then, of course, at the first stages is, do you like to do it, right? If yes, then you can dive deeper. But there's so much content out there. What is right and what is wrong? So it's good for discovery, but it won't turn you into a UX designer. So what you really need now is the second step, which is structured hands-on approach. So it's get educated, right? Education, I believe, should be deeply personal, whether it's reading, listening, or watching. Tailor that education to yourself. So user experience design, in my opinion, is more of a vocation than a profession. So let me tell you the difference. A vocation is generally a job that requires a particular skill set, and it's not necessarily dependent on a college degree, kind of like software engineering. And a profession is something that you have to study extensively for. So acquiring a special skill, for example, doctors and lawyers. So UX design is a vocation and not a profession, but it's cool. You still get paid for it. Maybe not as much as a doctor, but that's okay. Okay, so some ideas for education, or where can you find this kind of stuff, right? Free courses. We love free courses. Anything for free, right? It's a good way to try before you buy, to validate if this is for you. And there's a lot of resources that I'll share a bit later. But if you're a self-disciplined learner, you may never have to pay for your UX education like I did. What I did was learn on the job. And the other option is paid courses. There are actually a lot of paid courses, and really, really good ones out there, but they're not cheap and requires a lot of commitment. So you need to ask yourself, how much time can I dedicate each week? How much flexibility do I need in terms of scheduling? And what's my budget? Paid courses are a great immersive way for someone who's actually made that decision to become a UX designer. But yet again, they are not necessary. It's only when you actually decide to. And it won't get you hired, paid courses. However, applying what you learn and showing evidence of what you've done will get you hired. So let's talk about how to notice good paid courses, or what do they typically have, right? So one is project-based learning, a course that requires you to get hands-on to master the right practical skills and not just reading in theory. The second is a tangible portfolio piece. You want a paid course to actually have a curriculum that's built around you working towards your portfolio to refine it for the job market. And then the third thing is human support, a course that offers one or at least one industry expert to mentor you, to tutor you through the scenarios that you might have questions around. And then, of course, you want a course that supports your career, walk you through the hiring process of designers and coach you there. Ultimately, you're paying for a course because you want your career in UX. And yet again, these are great companies that offer really, really good courses, but they go up to something like $15,000. So you need to be really careful about this. So the other way of getting an education in UX is, of course, university. There's lots of design degrees out there, and they are getting more and more common and better and better. But yet again, it's not necessary to become a UX designer. What's more important is your portfolio and your experience. For example, I have a business degree. That's got nothing to do with design, really. There are some very, very good schools, probably the best schools in the world to teach UX. And the reason why they're good is because they offer all those things that I mentioned about in terms of a good paid course. And there's actually a great site called Top UX School Rankings that ranks all the best schools in the world. So go check that out. And of course, there's a bunch of free resources out there for learning. So Envision is a great resource, and also Nielsen and Norman Group. And here are some books that I will recommend for starters getting into UX design. And I won't go through all of them now. But you can have this after. So just a quick recap. How do you get educated? Free course is an option, paid courses, design degrees, and other online resources and books. Okay, so what's the third step? Getting the right tools. Actually, this is a bit of a tricky one because there might not be the right tool. There are industry design tools like Adobe, Figma, Sketch, InVision, but there are a lot of design tools out there, for example, right? So it's really whatever tool you use is essentially okay. Like my favorite is pen and paper, right? It's more about what helps you do what you need to do, right? Great designers have a big toolbox and they can kind of pick things out. And really the thing is focus on the outcome. And fun fact here, the first real design that I did that got shipped was a website that I used Keynote. And then I found Sketch 3.0. And now I think we're on like Sketch 70 point something. So tools are not as important as you might think. So don't get stuck trying to learn all the tools because it will never happen. And here, okay, so if I was to recommend some tools, right, because I said they weren't important, but these are the typical ones. So this book, Sprint, is really helpful because it gives you a process to follow, especially when you're a newcomer, you don't really know what to do. So, and it will help you facilitate workshops by bringing in frameworks for brainstorming, idea generation, critiquing, some of those things. Typeform is a great survey tool for you, good for basic user research. Figma is a user interface tool that you probably know already because it's very famous. And then, of course, there's this book called Atomic Design. Really helps you think about scalable designs. Think of the system holistically, bigger than the screen, and also how to deconstruct it into its very minutiae details. So, and the one thing that's good about all these resources that I've just mentioned, they are all free, okay? But if you're stuck between using Sketch and Figma, then just choose one and move on, right? It's really not that important. Okay. So yeah, we spoke about tools, right? It's about finding the right tools to help you solve your problems and going on. Okay. So let's move on. So the fourth step, get some experience. Arguably, one of the most important steps is practicing your design skills, right? Putting your newly acquired UX skills to the test. And here's some ideas on how to get more experience, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. Easy. give things away for free, right? This is how I started. I said, hey, to my friend, oh, are you building your new business? Can I help you design a website? And she said yes, and that's how my career began. There's another way is design challenges. There's a lots of interesting brands out there that offer, daily UI challenges or 100 days of product design. They'll email you, a simple design problem to solve with a deadline, and then you can work on that. So I have a list of 10 for you a bit later. So that was design challenges. The next one is unsolicited redesigns. It's essentially redesigning something for fun, right? To gain, more UX experience. So it could be an app or website that you love or you find confusing. There's some great case studies online about someone redesigning a specific feature of Instagram. So they wanted to improve usability and discoverability of certain things. So you can do that as well. The next one is a must. So from all those 3 design things I just mentioned, you need to actually then apply it into your portfolio, and showing your work is a must. So you need to add any previous things you did from your background. For example, if it's graphic design, you can then add that in to make you more well-rounded designer. But really, employers look at your portfolio and they will judge you based on what you can do, as we found out in our portfolio review earlier today. And so I want to talk about some industry standard portfolio things that you need to include in your UX portfolio, right, in order to get you that job. So definitely include your process. Employers want to see evidence of you being thoughtful, your reasoning behind your decisions, and then how you arrive there. Don't just give them the final one, show them how you arrive there. And the next one is to include rough notes and sketches. So you want to show them that you are creative and have lots of ideas and that you didn't jump straight into the solution. Have your ideation, have your notes. Don't worry about including all of them, but include some of them to see that you went through that process of iteration. Then you need to include documentation and UX artifacts. And this one, a lot of people forget about it because they just show the final thing and they leave out everything else. So you don't want to tell someone you did something. You want to actually show them. Right. So, for example, if you said you did interviews, show them the script, show them the results. If you did a journey map, show that. OK, and documentation, of course, links with that. And then your designs, the most obvious ones. Of course, you need to show your high fidelity mockups. Right. But don't be afraid to show some low fidelity stuff, wireframes. Right. Employers want to see that you can deliver high quality designs. But also don't forget to include a write-up. And then another thing that people often forget about is including something that's personal, right? You need to really stand out from the competition because, recruiters and hiring managers, they've seen so many portfolios. How are they going to choose you if you don't have something personal, right? Essentially, it's your own personal branding. So, for example, I made a video about my portfolio to capture who I am and what I care about. And I just put that on my portfolio. So if they watch that, hopefully they'll understand a bit about myself. Okay. And some experience. The last thing about experience is your soft skills. The hard skills when you start out is really, really important because it answers the question, can he or she actually do the job? But if you want to become better as a designer and more senior, I would argue that soft skills then take you to that next level because it answers questions like, can he or she be an effective communicator and move the needle, get them to where they want to go, right? So focus on the following when you're thinking about soft skills while you go through these processes of like working with other people. One is storytelling. How do you help someone empathize for who you're designing for? For example, I think we've all had bosses where they just don't care. They just want to do what they want to do. So how do you then tell them a story so they empathize around the user or the student they're designing for? And then the other one is critiquing, right? It's not just about delivering critique, but also how you receive it. How do you give feedback that's actionable, that's not personally attacking someone, but also capture what's needed to be improved. Critiquing is so important. And then, of course, presenting, persuading, engaging, and bedazzling your audience. And my favorite one is facilitating. How do you then lead a group of people to a common goal? Because we know that design is not just us at a desk. It's about speaking to people, engineers, stakeholders, users, and then everybody coming together to facilitate you to that common goal. Okay, so that was a lot about how to get experience. So just recap is free work, give away work for free, do design challenges that are online, do redesigns of your favorite thing, and don't forget to add to your portfolio. And finally, is the soft skills that then you can hone in. Okay, we have gone to the fifth. So the fifth is, how do you get over your imposter syndrome? You've done all of that stuff. So what then do you do? Well, I would argue you need to get social and connect with designers. And how does one typically connect with designers? I mean, easy, right? Become a community member. Like, one of the things I love about UX is the community. Designers typically, you'll find, are proactive, quirky, and we're so super happy to share knowledge. So if you wanted to meet your fellow designer friends, it's online communities, right? Like this one here, mentorship sessions. There's a really, really good one called Amazing Design People List. The events, meetups, Eventbrite, actually get out the door and meet people. And of course, conferences as well, like this, where you can hear people speak about their experience and become part of that conversation. And then this is where I probably learned the most in terms of the forward thinking in this design field is influential and thought leaders in the UX space, right? There are so many out there, as I mentioned before, but these are my favorite, and these are ones that could probably get you started. Okay, everybody knows this guy, right? Don Norman, first ever UX role at Apple. He literally wrote the book on user experience. And it's funny because he went to, like, I think Europe and was like, everything's confusing. What's going on? And then so he wrote this book about how to be more user or human centric. So he wrote the book Design of Everyday Things. Follow him. John Maeder, father of computational design. Fun fact, my boss actually works with him now. So it's pretty cool to see your boss being up there. Brad Frost, I mentioned a book earlier, which is Atomic Design. This guy is the author. So he's a thought leader on design systems, and he basically wrote the book on it. Another favorite of mine is Julie Zhu, an ex-VP of product design at Facebook. So she actually started out as a software engineer intern. That's crazy, right? And then another one of my favorites is Jonathan Courtney. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay, good. He's the founder of AJ and Smart, a design agency in Berlin, and he's more well-rounded. He's a very product-orientated designer that also speaks about business. So it's also very, very interesting for me. And guess what all of them have in common? None of them studied UX officially. That's mind-blowing, right? If they could do it, why can't you? So a recap of getting social is become a part of the community, get to know other designers, figure out what their problems are and how they solved it. And then, of course, follow the thought leaders on this subject, because UX is changing, especially with AI and machine learning. So you want to be on top of that. And the final step, of course, after you've done all of that stuff, is to get hired, right? You've worked so hard for this, so it's time to get paid. And the first step is obviously looking for a job. So apply for your first UX design job. Finding the right job is super hard, even for seasoned UX veterans. But here's some common advice I give to beginners. Use the JD as milestones. So look at the requirements and the skills that it says this job needs, and then work back from that, right? Add them to your portfolio, train yourself on what wireframing is, what prototyping is, how to do user interviews, right? Because majority of UX job descriptions are really generic, and there's only a few things, so it won't take you long before you crush each one of those skills, but use that as a guideline. Then go for quantity and not quality. This is the same as idea generation, right? What you care about at the beginning is the experience, right? Try to get paid for learning UX, right? Like, you don't need to pay for it. Someone else would pay for it, and you just learn on the job. I would recommend this one because having other UX designers around and their team around you will give you that mentorship and learning. So you actually have a lot of insight on the nuances of UX design and how to work in this field. So that will supercharge your career. And start now. I mean, if you think you're comfortable in applying for jobs, the sooner you start to get that job, the sooner then potentially you'll find your specialization, whether it's research, design systems, UI, content design, right? Start right away when you're comfortable. And of course, don't worry about the title. You're trying to get hired to improve your skills, and titles of UX designers are evolving constantly, so it doesn't really matter, right? And then this is, of course, your own personal preference and what you think is right or fair. But I would say put growth over salary, because the money will eventually come. Okay, so let's talk about some job interviews. You've first applied and you've got your first job interview, right? And it's quite scary because you're like, oh, what do I need to do? How do I need to do this, right? Fear not, most companies go through this process I'm about to show you when hiring. So as long as you're familiar with every bit of this, it's easy. Okay. So the first one is what we did today. For those of you who joined us, portfolio review, right? So it's either a hiring manager or a recruiter, and they basically just, you send them a link and they go through it and they just look at how good the quality is, right? So my advice would be here to show at least 2 to 3 well-written pieces of design work, and then aim for that to begin with. Then they typically say, after your portfolio is good enough, so they go to a phone interview, right? It's usually a quick hello. It's more of a formality to ask you about your background, your experience. So be confident, be concise, express how much this means to you because you really want to learn and get that job. And sometimes in emerging markets like Vietnam, it's also like a way to test your English. So it's fine. And the third one is a portfolio walkthrough, right? It's a presentation of your design work. So they'll consider your process, the quality of work, and how you present those ideas forward. So answer questions honestly. If you don't know, say you don't know. Take the feedback gracefully. They're trying to be objective to really find out how you think, and then show your best projects. Okay, this one also puts a lot of people off, is the UX Design Challenge. It's a short take-home test, and really they're trying to examine your ability to execute within a specific timeline, and then how you reason your design decisions based on limited data, and then of course the presentation. So go through the process you learn, list the constraints, and document everything. Then my favorite part is the whiteboard challenge. And a lot of people get thrown off by this too. It's a live whiteboarding session. So you're supposed to be in the office and they ask you a question, you start drawing on the wall. They'll look for you. They'll look for things like how well do you collaborate? How well do you think on your feet? And then your comprehension of the problem or the solution they ask you to build, right? So the tip is stay calm, ask lots of questions, and then think out loud, because they want to hear you verbalize how the process you're going through in your head. There's really no wrong answers here, right? Just have fun. And then I haven't seen this in the Vietnamese job market too much, but other companies do this, which is an app critique, right? It's an analysis of a popular application, say Snapchat or something. So they'll delve into really your product mindset, how you talk about the user and your attention to detail when you look at a product like Snapchat. So the advice here is put yourself in the shoes of the user, give examples of why the designer might have made that decision, and be opinionated. They want opinionated critique. So getting hired is all about applying for jobs and being ready for the job interview process and just doing that repeatedly, iterating on that, right? And I hope this 6 steps was helpful. I mean, of course, it's easier than it sounds, but it should guide you through it. I have an article on this, which I'll share with the channel on Slack. And, becoming a UX designer is both exciting and challenging. Be warned, it takes a lot of time. And it took me longer because I didn't have this guidance. But what I can say to the aspiring designers out there is, whether you decide to become a UX designer or not, I hope this has kind of helped you, and immersing yourself and failing forward and hacking at your own process will get you there quicker, right? You have many highs, you have many lows. You will definitely fail. There's going to be so many of arguments. You will lose sleep. You will learn a lot. You'll end up designing things for millions of people, and you'll end up loving it like I did. Good luck, and thank you.